Hey everyone, I'm James Albrassen, founder of Family Labs. I'm joined here by Kat Banas, Director of Transformation and Creative Director of Universal Everything. Kat, how are we today? Thanks for doing this with me.
Good. Doing really, really well today. Thanks, James, for having me here. I'm excited to have a good chat today.
Twice. For those who don't know about you, Kat, you quickly just share about what you do in Luxor, your role, your day to day, and just before we get into Luxor, just maybe as a quick description of your role.
Yeah, I can understand that it's a little ambiguous. The creative direction part, I think, is a little bit more straightforward, actually, where I really am looking holistically across Luxo, Universal Everything, Universal Profiles, and also the foundation of it too, and just making sure that there's alignment, not only within each entity creatively and also like holistically too in terms of values. But then when you're looking at these things horizontally across the board, okay, when we're going to have universal profiles next to Luxo or something like that, like they need to really dance well. They need to have a bit of coherence. They need to both maintain their own strong identities within themselves, but feel really good and be able to say like, oh, these still like feel like each other and that relates to that and that too, even though I know that those are separate things. So on a bigger picture, that's like a lot of what I've been doing for the past year or so is just keeping tune with that and fine tuning that, along with the Luxo branding and profiles, and then Universal Everything, and then also campaigns and creative things moving forward, developing teams for this too and different processes across the board, so that we're also working well with the foundation and within universal everything to that. So there's a good flow when we have announcements, when we have things, and when we have events or new releases and so on. For the director transformation part, um, it's a lot of what I mentioned before in terms of the alignment. It's making sure that things are aligned internally and externally. Um, There was such a heavy focus on just fashion before, which is fantastic, and that's something I know quite well, but this is so much bigger than that, so we wanna make sure that that's not missed and that that's really speaking itself and that Luxo is speaking true to all creatives, and
Exactly.
beyond, and then that universal everything and universal profiles, this is honestly, it's a public good, and I know that doesn't sound sexy, so part of my job is to make that sexy. Um, but it's universal, exactly what it is. So really making sure that within the team alignment that you have your core values, right? That there's an internal alignment there, and external with the external alignment, because that's when we have flow, right? That's good. That's what we want. Um, and then also basically building out a marketing department. Like, I don't love saying that. That sounds like really 1950s to me. I'm a forward thinker. I love everything new and fresh. I'm a future person. So the term marketing feels a little outdated to me, but I have to use it for reference. So basically building up communications, and then also making sure building up communications, creative, marketing strategy, and so on, and kind of getting a pillar or managers in each of those places as well. But the really important thing here is the alignment with the product team and making sure that there's a really smooth bridge and smooth like friendship between the two, because that is so essential in terms of translating. And that's ultimately what I'm
Exactly.
doing outwardly is just translating to the world. Like, what is this product and what are we here for? What are we doing? And people don't need to understand the word blockchain. I don't think people even need to understand the internet in the future. It just should be how we exist and are transacting or communicating.
That Kat. I got so many questions for you. But before we get into the nitty gritty into things, I was curious to hear more about your background, your childhood. I saw that in your LinkedIn profile you're into soccer and also fashion. That's so completely like different. How did that even come to be? I'm just curious to hear about your background.
Yeah, where do I start with this? Okay, so I I am someone who always have has felt a very strong conviction or purpose for whatever it is that I'm doing, and when I was younger, it was either like, when you're a kid, it was either fashion or astronaut, like technology astronaut, and, what grew stronger for me at the time was the fashion. So I, from a very young age, was always really inclined to art and fashion and just always knew I was going to do something in fashion. It's just what it was. It was just my North Star. But funny enough, I actually was an athlete first and foremost in my school years. I really came to love like body work, like being the strategy on the field, the intuition, the physics of it all, teamwork. I learned so much and I really excelled at it. I was doing soccer, dance, track, basketball, everything, and was actually a Division I athlete for field hockey, which in the States, it's like the highest ranking university for that sport that you can go into. So I did that my freshman year and, decided that that's cool. I basically spent a career mastering sports, if you will. And that was great. And I gained so much from that, but that wasn't my North Star, right? My North Star at that time was still fashion. So I went to school for business, actually. Funny enough. I really love the strategy of business and economics. I really love economics. I think it's so interesting. And I knew that it was going to be something that was going to help me the most in if I to pursue fashion or anything else creatively that I wanted to do. So I was so eager to get out of school, and I had a great program actually. I love my business program. But I was super eager to get out of school and get into the world. And so then I was in New York for 12 years, more than 12 years actually, um, working in fashion. And I really worked my way from intern to senior stylist, senior costume designer. And doing and doing what I could. I was even working in marketing at one point just to make money so I could intern at these other places, and I was so lucky to work with the best people, have the best mentors. For anyone here who that's like understands the fashion world, I was some of my mentors were the fashion directors of another magazine and Days magazine, Karen Shillingford and Katie Shillingford and Karen Langley, Robbie Spencer, Olivier Rizzo, who is one of the Prada stylists. I was on Raf Simons' team at one point, and I was working with clients like Bloomingdale's, John Varvatos. One of my bigger celebrity clients is James Franco, actually, as well. So I really stretched the whole board from commercial to editorial, the very artsy stuff, advertising, working with artists, and so on. I feel very lucky. Feel very lucky.
Damn, Kat, you have a crazy background. You've been jumping everywhere. I'm curious to hear how did you go into come from fashion into Web3? Was there an idea or a moment that came to you that made you jump? I'm curious to hear about that overall transition.
Okay, so um, I learned about Bitcoin in 2013, like a lot of other people, and I thought it was super cool. I really liked the economics of it. Um, but I'm not I I don't want to say that I'm not like the financial aspect of it wasn't motivating to me because I wanted to see it being applied like to our lives, right? So I thought it was super cool and super interesting and kind of kept my eye on it. But it was actually in 16, I was listening to a podcast with, I believe it was Vitalik, and he was talking about, it was a Laura Shin, an Unchained podcast, and they were talking about basically a pilot program with the World Food Program and the UN. They were doing a pilot program with Syrian refugees, um, basically to put food vouchers in on-chain wallets for them. So instead of them needing physical vouchers, they will go to the market and then they would need that to purchase food. They were creating on-chain wallets for them and putting the food voucher in the wallet, right? And so that eliminated the need for intermediaries. It eliminated the need to actually physically give people them because a lot of them were not in the camps. They were going, trying to find work, eliminated need for theft and the identity piece. And like this is a super cool, awesome initiative. And the thing that hit home for me was like, oh, wow, like you're giving people identities that like, either they don't have a passport anymore, they don't want their passport anymore because they're gonna be persecuted, or they had to flee and they couldn't have their passports. So, not only do these people, like, no longer need a government telling them they get to be a person, like, this on-chain identity signals that they're a person and this is their identity. And like, so that was such a game changer for me. I get the chills every time I talk about it. Um, because I realized like, oh my God, no longer do we need anyone else telling us we get to be a person, or do we need a passport, or a government like stating this. It's like, no, we're people because we're people, and that's just, it is what it is. And I understand there's a lot of nuances that, but I do know that this is the reset for new societies, new foundations for new economic systems, and new transactions, just everything moving forward. And that really planted a seed in me that just grew bigger and bigger and bigger. That it took me some time to kind of like, I guess, transition into blockchain fully. It was really challenging. I started going to conferences in New York in like 2017 and 2018, for looking for things on chain, looking for like things to do on chain that are were not DeFi focused. This was before NFTs was even a word. There was conversation around provenance, but ultimately, like, it was a really bad experience for me, especially being a woman, especially being non-technical at the time. It was really, really tough. So I was quite discouraged and tried to go the other way to bring these concepts into fashion, knowing that this is going to change art in ways that we don't even know yet, right? And that was even harder. It was just too hard of a thing for people to grasp. So I kind of stepped away actually for a bit. And at that time too, my North Star was changing from fashion to blockchain at that point. So like, um, Dark Night of the Soul, it was a really tough time for me to learn, like, okay, how is this going to work? How is this going to transition here? I felt like I had no community. I was really having to go through quite a bit of like relearning, and did a lot of self teaching, and just like following my gut feeling, honestly. And then that led me into user experience design. It was a way for me to transition my design work and my kind of like my background or mastery into um, uh, and like systems really. I'm really interested in city planning, architecture, how people that are designing these things are actually shaping the quality of people's lives, and that's a really big deal. And I don't think people think about that very much. And ultimately, like with tokens, that's what's happening as well. Like you need to be careful about that because you're shaping people's lives or certain things, and I think that's something that we really need to be careful about. Um, so yeah, user experience got me into the tech world much more and into Figma. I love Figma. I love it so much. And really uh, being able to bring my creativity into the computer, or digitally, I should say. And then from there, I had a friend encouraging me to get back into the space in 2022. She just knew a friend and knew I'd been talking about it and just things weren't catching. So she encouraged me to join this DAO. So I did. And then from there, everything just like snowballed one thing after another. Went to NFC, NYC 2022. And from there, everything just like one thing after another. That's where I met Fabian. That's where I learned about Luxo. But more importantly, I was learning about there are conversations about identity. There are things going on. There
Exactly.
are, communities that are talking about, how are we running organizations and government structures and things that are way beyond DeFi. So I got really involved with communities like Radical Exchange, and other DAOs as well, and just started learning as much as I could. Um, yeah, and then I found out that a lot of these projects were happening in Berlin. A lot of these like thoughts and communities were happening in Berlin. So I came and visited for Berlin Blockchain Week. And then after that I went back to New York and just started packing. My body just said, I have to be here. So I just moved. Yeah. And I was fortunate enough to be able to. So yeah. And everything's just sort of happened since then. Yeah.
That cat. Just double clicking on your story on how you came into Luxor. You mentioned how identity and Luxor are quite synonymous. Especially with universal profiles and the standards that they're providing for builders like us. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about what made you go into Luxor more deeply, and especially working with a team. Like, why didn't you do your own project? Maybe do your own um yeah, build your own project on Luxor. Curious to hear your thoughts around that.
Yeah. So I think after doing some research, especially on different identity protocols, I really found that it was actually a workshop that Jean was hosting or Jean was running, um, smart contract John. I, I was it was like I was kind of being able to like understand enough of what was happening to be like, wow, this is the UX that we need. Like, you have the holistic profile now that you can use and kind of like move with the profile now instead. And it can grow and expand and it can change and it can be ever evolving just like a person. And for me, that's what it is. It just was like, oh, that is just it. So that really excited me. I wasn't seeing that anywhere else. At the same time too, I was studying tokenomics a little bit, and just trying to understand these systems a little bit better and how they differ from the old ones, which is super, super, just a little bit more, right? Super interesting. Um, and I actually did find some like protocols that I want to start. Uh, I guess making. But the thing is that we're just not there yet. I am really interested in geophysical locations and like really attaching digital to physical as well on location basis as well. I have a vision of people of every house running a node, but we're just not there yet in terms of our development. A lot of this stuff would require more zero knowledge proofs and privacy preserving protocols too. So a lot of my ideas or visions are still a little bit further out there in terms of like setups and how I see this working with profiles in Luxo. But I think I also just had such a strong conviction too for really feeling like I understood not only like with my background in the fashion industry and just understanding creatives. I am a creative, um, understanding artists really at their core, and just kind of that whole business, right? For lack of
Exactly.
a better word, the ins and outs, the little nuances, the ego plays, and so on, and understanding the potential of this tech and needing to get it there and feeling like, oh wow, not even necessarily like in one place versus another, but in all these different pillars, right? In fashion, in music, in art. Like these are all really big industries within themselves. And just kind of understanding, okay, I can translate to these people really, really well. But there's something bigger going on here with the profiles themselves that's for everyone holistically. Art, music, fashion, they're the drivers of culture, whether we like it or not. That is always when you think of new cities coming about, when you think of yeah, new anything coming out, it's always artists first. They're always pushing the wave. That's the soft power that it is. And these profiles are soft identity, right? Therefore, they're not right now government related at all. There are social, there are soft identities, and that's the wave that you need for mass adoption, really.
I
Um,
agree.
yeah.
And yeah, I totally agree, Kat, because from seeing my experience, especially during my uni years, I was heavily into reselling like clothing, Bape, Supreme, Raf Simons, my Fear of God, all those really high-end brands, and I totally see where you're coming from. They drop all these trends from, especially like young people, like they just drive so many trends. I'm curious, double clicking on you mentioned culture. One of the things that you guys are pushing out there is culture engineers. Can you maybe elaborate more on that? Share more about that with the community? I'm curious to hear more your thoughts around that.
Yeah, cultural engineer really, I mean, for me, when I actually love hearing what people make of it when they think of that term, like what's their idea of that, right? For me, within the Lexo ecosystem, a cultural engineer is someone that is you have the developer, right, who is the one doing the coding, doing that fun stuff behind the scenes. But you also have a whole group of people outside of that. Those are the ones that are the designers, the oftentimes product builders that are much more outward facing. And they're solving sometimes different problems. And they're also coming up with a lot of protocols or different nuances within themselves. So they're people that are also building, that are also engineering, and they're really understanding, okay, for new voting mechanisms, new for new types of NFTs, for new types of transactions, this and that. Like you don't have to be a coder to be able to come up with this stuff. Like a lot of it is it's just an understanding of human behavior, an understanding of like, okay, well, what do I want? How do I want to transact with my community or my fans or my team or my friends? Um, so it's basically including this group of people around builders as well because they're working with, or I should say developers, because they're working with developers. And it's really just embracing them too and saying, like, this is like if you're on Luxo and you're building and you're not a developer, you're still a cultural engineer. You're shaping culture in ways that we don't even know yet necessarily, but like just making sure that we're including everyone in what this is because that's ultimately what's happening.
That
And I also see
um
too that term being able to be used in many different places. Elsewhere, there's millions of cultural engineers. Artists are definitely cultural engineers too. But yeah, within the Lexo ecosystem, that's more specifically what I mean.
that zooming out a bit, Kat. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about you mentioning identity is um becoming more and more important, especially in this digital age. You mentioned that universal profiles and not universal profiles are more about self identity, not really about hard identity. Um, do you feel like this connection between the digital and physical worlds where the self identity and hard identity will come together? Do you think that will eventually come? When do you see it? When do you see that happening?
Yeah. Well, just to say too, universal profile files are equipped to work with hard identity protocols. So you can work with them or integrate them alongside that, which is fantastic. But a future that I'm building and that I envision is that our soft identities actually become more of our hard identities in the future, where we're able to pick and choose more our communities, where we're from, what we're doing, and those reputation systems, those tokens, those different value systems that we come up with, may actually outweigh old systems or hopefully will outweigh old systems so our soft identities
Agree.
may become our hard identities or more valuable. I mean, arguably you could say that now too, but for certain things at the time you still need a passport to get from one place to another.
And do you feel like, you know, um, maybe you're relating it to current sub identities right now with like Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Telegram. How do you differentiate, Web3 based sub identities and decentralized models? Do you see a distinction between them in terms of culture or even, yeah, mainly about the culture part?
Yeah. So, um, as you guys know with the grid, or as you know with the grid, the idea is to bridge to the 2 so it doesn't have to feel like a huge transition. Um, this is a bit of a multiple part question. It doesn't have to feel like a huge transition, but, there's actually a pretty big jump from the mental models that we have right now where we don't even realize it, but when we're going into Instagram, we're going into X, we're going into TikTok, we're going into a platform to find our profile, to see our followers, to see our system, our communities, right? And our subscribers, our likes, and so on. Um, and that's just something like that's like, oh, that just is what it is, right? But when you leave that, that does not come with you, right? That stays in the platform itself. With universal profiles or with on-chain identities, you're taking your identity outside that you own and you're plugging it into a platform, right? And then you leave the platform and that comes with you. So your community and your followers, your likes, all the new value systems that will come from this are going to stay with you. And eventually you're going to become your own platform because that's going to grow and it expand in itself. So people are going to start visiting yours. So this is a completely new mental model that, we have to transition people into as well. Um, what is so profound about this is that when you're a DJ, right? And you want to sell tickets to your upcoming show. You might post like your show tour dates in your Instagram, right? But to get tickets to your show, you're asking your fans to leave that platform and go to another platform, log into that
Exactly.
platform, credit card information, all of that. So immediately, like a platform that you don't even own, you know, bully once you leave that, like, what is it like? It's like in you, it's like after 2 clicks, you lose most people. So you have that aspect. So you have, which is good that you have the really passionate people going, right? So you will have those people like, okay, I really want to go to this show or see this DJ. So you will have those people, but you're losing a whole stream of economics within that. And then you're going to another ticketing platform where they have their own system and their own fees. And, you're only making X amount from that as well through your label or through your manager or something like that. With universal profiles, like you can do all of that, or you will be able to do all of that in your profile. And that means that you can grow from individual to brand to business to enterprise in one profile, all in one place. So you would be able to have the economics all living in one place. That's the idea. And that is something we've never seen before. So we don't even know how that's going to look. And the amount of capture, the value capture that a person will be able to have from that is something we don't, no one's seen that yet, right? So that's something that is going to be completely game changing, and something that we have to make sure that people understand this, uh, and find new ways to make sure that this is easy for people to see because that's a whole nuance in itself. Keeping all of your economics now in one place is something we've never seen before, right? So a lot of different things will come of that. Um, a lot of different things will come of that as well. And I do also want to touch on the kind of more philosophical parts of this too. In terms of identity, what we are going to see as well. So, our identity, right, is when we think of our identity, like as an artist, what you're painting, what music you're creating, what you're crafting, what outfits you're creating, or what production you're making. That story, whatever lands on the canvas, it has to do with how you feel about yourself and your identity. You're capturing emotions, you're capturing energy that's landing about your interactions with the world outside of you, right? Um, and how you feel about that or how that's coming about, but it has to do with your identity ultimately, right? So if we're taking our identities and we're putting them on chain, so we now have reference to new communities, new friends, new transactions, new societies, new economic systems, like that means our art is going to change significantly too, because we're going to have a new way to reference ourselves individually that we've not seen before. And that to me is so like, wow, like we don't even know what we're going to see from it. I think that this is going to be a huge paradigm shift in terms of just what how we relate to ourselves and other people and the different types of art that we see coming of this like I guess new paradigm, if you will. Yeah.
And just hearing you speak about that, Kat, I feel like, being you mentioned earlier your role in Universal Everything, it's your job to try relay um the vision of Luxor. There's so many different avenues you can go into, right? Like what's your mindset or like mind frame in head, like this you can, because I feel like before Luxor was mainly about technical like LSPs, it's open source standards, the better UX, but now you just mentioned about identity and how we can enable these new paradigm of art. There's so many different ways you can go into, right? I'm curious to hear more about your thoughts of yeah, which way you wanna go with. Maybe share more about that thoughts with the Luxor community.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like right now we need to provide impact, right? So it's kind of like, well, which way does it make sense to do that in this very moment with where we are? As you can look at that. I mean, yeah, ultimately I just see I really have a strong vision for how things are gonna be in the future now that we have this new identity piece. And I'm really excited to see how things will unfold. Because I will say that I do have quite a vision, but a lot of it is like we don't even know what we don't even know yet. So I think that's why it's so important right now to just align ourselves and um, to make sure that we're just getting to this place of like like good understanding and usability first and foremost, and getting to this like full circle moment that Fabian has talked about with the token generator and the app verifier, so that we can start to see these systems and ecosystems play out more with individuals and artists, and you know who we don't even know what we don't know, creating their value systems as well. um yeah, so I think ultimately too, maybe to better answer your question, like, um, my frame for how I look at all of this in general, really comes down to the laws of nature. Um, when I think of blockchain and how I just know that it's the technology that's gonna push us forward as humanity. You look at the design of it, it mimics mycelium, it mimics brain neurons, it mimics tree root systems, a decentralized network, right? And so if we have identities that we're using on a system that mimics nature, then ultimately we're realigning ourselves and leveling up collectively to the place that I think that we're supposed to be. I don't think we need so many middlemen. um, we should have ownership. When we have ownership over our identities and, to the best of our ability, our data, then and then being able to transact like actually with one another, not in between, um, not with a centralized something in between, then that's going to be really game changing. And that's kind of how I see things like shifting as a whole, and Luxo is just the engine for this, and profiles are the engine for this for now. That's what we need to get us there.
That cat. Changing gears a bit. I'm curious to hear more about. You mentioned, you really love identity right now. A major topic, especially here in Australia, is about mental health awareness. I'm curious to hear more about how that could relate to um, this identity that's being put on chain. You know, this I feel like, um, especially now with social media, they're trying to ban social media because it's really bad for kids' mental health and stuff like that, bullying and stuff like that. Do you feel like this could help the younger generations? I'm curious to hear more about your thoughts regarding that. Being having your reputation on chain, being more transparent about your actions.
Yeah, I hope so. Um, for me, ultimately, this means that we'll be able to be more authentic, right? That idea of new value systems for me is that there's so much kind of terribleness happening because of people having to be out of complete alignment with themselves and make money and do what they need to do to survive, right? Or now with social media, it's um people doing what they think they need to be doing in order to get likes or get followers to game that system. And it's totally out of alignment with who they are. Um I do like the idea that um, social media as we know it has provided us with a new version of what that could look like, just a framework for saying, oh, likes can get you XYZ versus money. So people have a new frame for value systems now. And I think that that's valuable. Um, I would really like for us to find ways and value systems that go beyond social media that we know it now and just the typical likes and followers. That means that we can be rewarded for what the things that we're aligned with and be able to live and flourish for the things that we're aligned with, not because of the things that we feel we have to do in order to just survive or make it, if you will. So I'm very optimistic about this, but technology in itself is unbiased. Um, so it's up to people what they make of it as well. You know what I mean?
Exactly right. It's like, it's like same with um using a knife. You can cook it with food, or you can stab someone with it. So I agree with you on that. I'm just curious, do you feel like having more control on our digital identity will give us more freedom, or do you think that will create more? It's like the paradox where you have more.
Responsibility.
Um, yeah, exactly right. What's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's something that actually, um, I do talk about a bit is, or we talk about a bit is the idea of, this is a whole new responsibility that people will have now that they're not necessarily used to. And you kind of have to train people into understanding that and knowing like, okay, this transaction is transparent. Like that's something that people need to be educated on or know as well. Um, so it will be a progression and a learning for people as well. But ultimately, I think that it's for the best. But I think too, like we're gonna have systems where it's like, kind of choose your own algorithm or choose your own system as well. So um when that part gets built out, it will also then become like the responsibility will be able to kind of delegate, but in a very informative way. Does that make sense?
Can you maybe elaborate more?
Like I'm actually thinking about banking apps, which is like not that sexy, but the convenience of banking apps right now is that they kind of like just do stuff and you don't really have to think too hard about like a lot of where your money is and this and that. And this really makes you become much more aware of it. And, sadly, we're trained like, oh, that's just normal. But the ownership of money now and okay, where are we putting it? Which wallet are we putting it in? And just there's so many, I guess, different aspects to this now, or in terms of like if you're having budgets for savings, you can be much more intentional about it now as well. Um, yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's an interesting. Maybe that's not the best example, but I do feel like it will give people a better sense of responsibility and sense of awareness. Maybe is what it is, like self awareness that wasn't there before, and I think that that's important. Yeah.
Um, you mentioned, um, being more authentic, being more genuine connection. Do you think, I think you touched on a bit before where you can pick your own algorithm. I just want to double click on that. I'm curious to hear how you foresee that happening, especially how that relates with um, Luxor and the standards that they're putting out. How can that facilitate that in the technical layer? Maybe you can share more about that.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be great if in the future we have feeds where you can pick your own algorithm for what you see or what you wanna see, the different types of communities you wanna be tapped into, the different types of information that you wanna be, subjecting yourself to, as opposed to just what we're handed right now. We don't have a the most we can do is kind of save things or, when you first sign up on X, you can say, "Oh, these are the things that I like," but you still get, like, really weird stuff coming up on your algorithm that you did not ask to see. Um, and that for me creates really not a great experience. So this idea of being able to say like, "Hey, I'm really growth oriented, so I wanna find things that are gonna help me, achieve whatever goal." Or if not that, then I wanna find things that like help me be more creative that inspire me, and the ability to kind of pick my algorithm to like so that it can bring up new artists that I've never even like, I don't know, an underground artist in like Thailand that I'm just completely unaware of or would not have otherwise seen, because it's just being filtered with like so many other things that I did not ask for. So just the ability to be
Exactly.
more intentional in terms of like I guess, who I wanna become or who a person would like to become or what they would like to be diving into at the time.
Exactly right. Because I think at the end of the day, I think these algos are pretty much kind of shaping you subconsciously, you know what I mean? Although it's a very quick fix, but I think at the end of the day, it just
Yeah.
it wires your brain, you know what I mean? So
Yeah, it's like the city planning, right? That you didn't have a choice in, right? It's like I
exactly.
you're shaping people's lives, and that's a huge responsibility, um, in and of itself, but you need to be really careful with that because that determines. I mean, I don't wanna say these algorithms are determining the quality of people's lives. That's a bit of a stretch. We still have our own autonomy and whether or not we decide to, interact with social media, but for a lot of kids, it's really
Exactly right.
challenging. Yeah.
Because they're still developing their brains, you know what I mean? They don't really know what's kind of going on. Um, that's what I was going back to earlier, where especially younger generations, I think this is what's really important for them. So yeah, I appreciate you guys for really pioneering and trying to push this out to the world. Any final words, Kat, for everyone out there?
Mm, just that I'm really excited and I'm so passionate about this, and I feel grateful that I get to do what I love. Um Yeah, I don't know. Maybe just a message of like authenticity is just really where I'm at right now and where I see alignment for us and the ecosystem in the future and just I guess the future of humanity. Yeah. Yeah. I
I
also
love
will
that.
say too, what is like really nice what's going on alongside of this is these pop-up cities and these experimentation cities that are going on. Because it's a lot of the same thought train, which I think is really, really cool, and there's a lot of artists here, actually. There's a lot of people, culturally taking shape in these spaces too, and that I think if we start thinking along those lines as, like, an ecosystem or outside of the ecosystem too, like, wow, we really have new technology to start creating, like, very new societies, um, and kind of thinking bigger picture like that, it's, like, quite powerful.
I agree. I'm not sure if you've seen them, Balaji's network school.
Network state, yeah.
Like, I think
Super
they're
cool.
doing really, yeah, doing great work. Thanks, Kat. Thanks for today. Have a
Yeah,
good day.
absolutely. Thank you, James.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.